愛の始まりの日命の木の下で口たちの声の遠い残響二人で聞いたなくしたものすべて愛したものすべて
In another 12,000 years, let's podcast again in the next life. But until then, welcome everyone to Super Audio Robo Podcast Z. I'm Ark, that's Neff, and this is the show where we recommend you the finest mecha content for your cultural and artistic development.
Yeah, and wow, do we have a show today for you all?
Yeah.
I don't know if this is the wildest show we have on the list, but it's one of them. It's up there.
It's one of the wildest, but at least not the most objectionable.
Yes, no, that's another show which we will not mention, but, you know.
It's another show we're not going to mention, and we are never going to stop fucking teasing you about it.
Yeah. So what is the show we're talking about today, Ark?
Well, we're talking about Genesis of Aquarion, a 2005 super robot anime just laden with a shit ton of like mythological references and symbolism, and it's all contextualized in like one of the wildest combining super robots conceived. Certainly during the 2000s.
This show is, it's something else, especially when we get into the synopsis for this.
And all the other details after, because you might be shocked when you hear who is the brainchild of this entire anime.
Oh, yeah.
But until then, we'll get into the synopsis, describe what the hell Aquarion is about. And it goes like this. 12,000 years ago, in the Age of Myth, the Shadow Angels were once rulers of the earth and had humanity under their subjugation. That is, until they were betrayed by one of their own when he had fallen in love with a human girl. His name was Apollonius, and using the mechanical angel Aquarion, he freed the human race and drove the Shadow Angels to slumber. Now, in the modern day, the Shadow Angels have returned, harvesting humans for their energy, and only the organization known as Diva can stand against them with the resurrected Aquarion, piloted by young teens with special powers, and who may be reincarnations of souls from 12,000 years past. They are humanity's only chance for survival. Yeah, I guess short of it, Sparta freed the humans in the past, and now teenagers with attitude have to pick up the slack.
Yeah, that's a good way to summarize all that. It is, it's kind of complicated.
And even then, I left out a very key important detail in that synopsis because it makes more sense when we get into like the other categories like later on in this episode that need to be discussed. So we might as well use that to transition into our prehistory, so we can actually give more background on this very unique, still kind of unmatched super robot anime in certain regards. And that is who directed it? What studio made it? Well, it was directed by Shoji Kawamori, and it was made by his studio, Satellite. This was the anime he directed coming off of the production of Macross Zero.
I can't imagine coming from shows like Macross and even Escaflowne to this.
And even with stuff like Escaflowne, with his involvement, that was still strictly with like the just the mechanical design itself.
Oh, yeah.
That this is like basically kind of like the first original mecha anime where he's like more heavily involved in things beyond just the mecha design, so like kind of the first one since the Macross series, and like him more or less, inheriting, I guess, like the legacy of the franchise over, like the other key members that were responsible for it back in the 80s. But as you would expect, yeah, like the other crazy thing about Kawamori making this is that it's obviously a departure from the kind of mecha shows that he has worked on. Like this is not a real robot anime. This is a super robot anime. And yet, even when it comes down to like how the mecha designs are presented, you can still tell that it's Kawamori even when it is way more super oriented, because his design sensibilities, especially when it comes to transformation and combination mechanisms, are on full display. The type of super robot that Aquarion is, this is what makes it stand out. There are robots throughout history that like are a combination of multiple vehicles or smaller robots into one giant robot. But that combination is usually very static. Like it's generally like, sometimes it's as simple as 3, but you typically get like 5, like the Super Sentai kind of standard of like robot combinations. You don't really get any that taps into what Getter Robo pioneered as the first combining robot, where it is 3 machines that can combine into 3 different forms. Aquarion just goes straight for that, and I think that is absolutely beautiful. Least of all because Kawamori's like expertise as a mecha designer means that it does not combine them the same way Getter Robo does. It's not just smashing 3 planes together and suddenly it's a robot.
No, it kind of makes some sense. There's some mechanical like designs that make it so you'd be like, yeah, I can see how they can do that.
Like all the key animation you see when like the Aquarion combines into its different forms, they drew enough frames to make sure that you are lingering on every single joint and like limb as it moves around, and showing how, oh yeah, like these can be either the legs or the arms or the wings depending on which orientation it's in. Like it all makes sense. Mm-hmm. And it's really cool to see. But obviously with Aquarion being directed by Kawamori, it's like the mecha design isn't all that his involvement entails with this. It obviously goes beyond that into like the story, the characters, and even like the very themes that envelop it, because I feel like this, especially for mecha anime, even compared to the Macross series, where like in later entries, he was never director, like de facto director on like Frontier or Delta, for instance, but he was very much in like an executive kind of like position of overseeing like what was being made and, verifying that, yes, this is all within like, this is all correct and within the worldview of what the Macross universe is supposed to be. But even then, Macross does not delve into quite the level of like spiritual concepts and ideas that seem very much of interest to Kawamori, and is why Aquarion runs with them so hard. Like, all manner of religion and mythological references exist in some form, ranging from stuff like the Tree of Life, the Sephiroth from Judeo-Christianity lore, all the way to, I think most importantly, the Age of Aquarius, which was already a big astrological concept. You look up the page for it and it's like, there is like over a dozen different like interpretations of like what it represents and like when people think it's supposed to happen. But in the broad sense, it leads with the idea that the Age of Aquarius, it's supposed to be, I guess, like the idea that, when that age happens, humanity enters a point where like it reaches like unity and spiritual enlightenment, which makes a lot more sense when you look at that, and why the robot is called Aquarion, and also like that it is machines that are merging together into a union. It all makes sense.
It makes sense in the context of this show. It's they definitely pull heavily in the whole mythology and religion and all that.
Especially if you got like a lot of familiarity with like Hinduism and like Indian lore. In fact, even as a little bit of extra context to kind of further prove like how much Kawamori is really into these ideas and topics and wants to explore them. In 2001, he directed an anime called Earth Maiden Arjuna, which also pulled many ideas from Hinduism. I mean, even the name Arjuna is like referring to like a heroic character or deity, I forget which, from Hindu lore, and it's all wrapped around like a more serious magical girl anime with an environmentalism message.
Yeah, that makes sense. I could see how we can go from that to this.
Yeah, I imagine it all ties back into, as important this Macross is, and Kawamori being like pretty much like the steward of the franchise, he still wants to explore his own wild ideas. And oh boy, in the 2000s, did he fucking go deep in them. And with such romantic concepts being present, like the core idea of union, in which this robot is formed by the merging of body, mind, and soul, it'd be assumed that this anime is very philosophical and dramatic, and most important of all, serious. Well, technically it is, but it's also very silly and off the wall in equal measures.
Yeah, hey, you wanna know what else this This anime delves into the topic of puberty. Oh boy, it
Yeah.
doesn't delve into puberty and teenage hormones.
Yeah, the big sex.
Yeah.
Which doesn't happen physically, but you do feel it metaphysically, I guess, during union. But by Kawamori's own admission, I forget what like the video is. It was so long ago that I don't even have like the link saved. It would probably take me a while to find it, but it was him kind of talking about like in a brief overview of like all the past anime projects that he's worked on and how it kind of relates to his sort of ideals. And that I think when it got to Aquarion, he stated that he likes to treat serious topics in a very silly way while taking very silly topics and treating them very seriously. I think more accurately, though, is that, like, especially with how this anime goes, is that it's more that he likes to blend the two instead of treating them as hard opposites. Mm-hmm. Because when the show inevitably does get to points, especially near the end, where dramatic stakes and tensions are rising, it's not suddenly turning into a comedy or anything.
Yeah.
But it is like something will start out clearly framed as a joke before you quickly see a couple minutes later it's like oh no one is taking this lightly. This is actually bad. All you really need to see to understand what Kawamori is getting at is what happens when the Aquarion combines and how the pilots feel at that exact moment.
Oh yeah, it's one of those things you have to just see for yourself to get it.
Mm-hmm. It's funny, even when I first saw it, I thought it was something where like I initially thought it was most obvious when it came to the female pilots because the sounds they make are very clearly them like moaning in ecstasy.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like, no, I can actually imagine some of the guys like letting out like these specific masculine sounds as well during coitus. I can see it. Yes.
Yeah.
It is. Like, as you say, it is about puberty, it is about, like, sexual thoughts, but also, it's at least, to its credit, it is not so crass about, like, those carnal desires that it leaves it at that. It still looks at it as a means to, like, you know, like, what some people, like, romanticize about, anyway, when they are in, like, a romantic and sexual relationship, where it is about that spiritual union between someone you love and trust very deeply.
Yeah, there is a lot of, I guess, like, sexual themes as well, but they're not in the fan service kind of way is how I'd put it.
They're definitely not trying to make it feel like it's reminding you of, like, anything pornographic.
Yeah.
There's ways that you could get away with, like, delving deep into, like, the concept of, like, sex and, like, romance in like all sorts of levels. Like, this anime is proof of that. But at least one other important thing about Aquarion that is good to get into, something that is seen as exceptionally memorable, almost eclipsing the show that is associated with in some circles, is its music.
Mm-hmm.
As far as composition, Yoko Kanno was one of the two composers for this anime, so this was like a dual composer joint between her and Hisaki Hogari. But even so, I do think Yoko Kanno's biggest contribution, the music, is the opening theme, sung by Akino Kawamitsu, otherwise simply known as just Akino. Yeah, it is the opening theme, same title as the anime itself, and is nothing short of fantastic. I actually had to like look up a bit more details about Akino specifically, because I realized after all this time and hearing that song like so much, I never really dug too much deeper in like what her background is. And like and I guess like she was part of a band formed with her siblings called Bless 4.
Oh.
And that explains why like whenever I've looked up like music credits, like depending on which auto-generated video that you get in YouTube search results, it'll either say it's by Akino or Akino from Bless 4, which I initially thought the name would have been, oh, maybe she was in an idol unit. No, it was a band. It was a family band, of all things. She's also Japanese American, which I think when it came to, when you think about how like a lot of J-pop can like just insert English words in and other like full sentences at times, that like you could clearly tell like when those words are being sung, like how heavy like the singer's Japanese accent is like kind of like distorting it or whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming because of the fact that like she was born in Utah, but obviously is still like part of a Japanese family, that like she had to have gotten like a lot of, I guess, like cross language knowledge between English and Japanese, that like her pronunciation of whenever like English words are used in her songs are like surprisingly like very clean. But obviously, like even without all that detail, it's like the thing you recognize most with Akino is that her singing voice is just incredibly smooth. Like with that voice combined with Kano's composition of this song, that is just, it is big, in classic anime song fashion. It is literally about the anime. It was not, like a separate song from a popular band licensed out. Like it's of little surprise that this one song has endured so far past the legacy of the anime it was made for 20 years after. Memes on Nico Nico Doga from the mid-2000s is proof of that. I still remember seeing those.
Yeah, like this song itself has gained a life of its own, because they even like when they brought back Aquarion like as a new show, they were like, let's just do the opening, the old opening again.
We'll do it again, and this time it's a duet between Akino and Neki Basara.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, isn't the first time he ever did a cover of Genesis of Aquarion.
Oh, of course.
He actually did one, I think, even back around the time of this show. And hell, even this song was like subject to a Masaki Endao cover. So, plenty of people, plenty of talented musicians also got in on the cover song bandwagon for this particular tune. And yet, somehow, it is not actually my favorite Akino sung theme for Aquarion, if you can believe that.
Which one would that be?
It's the second opening for Aquarion Evil.
Oh, yeah, I don't think I've heard that one.
Yeah, Paradoxical Zoo.
Mm-hmm.
I love the high energy it has going on with it. There are two opening themes for even just Genesis of Aquarion, and even the second opening is still really good in its own distinct way. Yeah, if you like Aquarion, know that you will absolutely love like the opening themes to this anime as well. And probably, you'll also end up liking the opening themes for the subsequent anime more, depending on who you are. But I don't know. Like, we have the whole recommendation section for me to get into what I think about all the sequel series after this. Because I'm definitely most qualified to, give a comment on each of those.
Definitely more qualified than I am, because I've only just watched this show and not anything else after.
Yeah, I mean, even then, whatever, even this is getting ahead of ourselves, this is still the best Aquarion.
Yeah.
So, eventually, Genesis of Aquarion would air on Japanese TV in 2005, running from April 4th to September 26th. 26 episodes, the perfect length. Mm-hmm. It would receive an alternate version of the story 2 years later with, like, a two-part OVA, which... And when I say like an alternate version of the story, I mean very alternate. It is not at all like the same. But still an interesting look at, like, if you want more Aquarion, but something different and not, like, an entire season's worth of episodes to dedicate to.
Yeah, you have choices.
That's background shit out of the way. Now we can get into the primary mecha, get to talk a lot more about our main robot in detail.
Yeah, so let's start.
As we said early on, the unique thing about Aquarion as a combiner robot is that it is directly inspired by Robo in that it's a triple combiner, which means it is made up of three machines. These are the vector machines, Sol, Mars, and Luna, red, blue, green, respectively. And they're all basically like very futuristic looking, kind of like large size aircraft ships, essentially. Like, it is the sort of thing where, like, once you've seen the combination sequences enough times and you look at them when they are in their actual vector machine forms, you can very clearly tell in some cases, like, oh yeah, you just took like the legs and the feet and just slammed them together to create like the nose of the aircraft. I see what you're doing.
Yeah.
Despite these being designed by Kawamori, he's not trying to make them in the same way that they look in Macross, where, their aircraft form looks like a real life, plane of sorts. Probably because trying to make them do, like, double duty of looking like that, but also being able to form either the legs, the upper body, or the wings of the robot when combined. Like 4 different forms would have been like trying to do too much work all at once. So it's like, yeah, just the visual design of the vector machines when they are in their aircraft form is like, it just looks the way that it does because it is the most practical.
Pretty much. It works for what the show is trying to do.
But obviously, what you care about is seeing the actual Aquarion forms that it combines into.
Yeah.
So you got like the main one, Aquarion Sol, or Solar Aquarion, technically, as this form is referred to. You know, it's basically our getter one of the 3. Unsurprisingly, it is red.
It's red, yeah.
But instead of looking like a Japanese like red like 2-horned oni or of some kind, you know, it's very much more like a cross between an angel and a samurai. I think is the best way to describe it, especially when you look at like the helmet and its headpiece.
Yeah.
Like a lot of like a samurai helmet that decided to have its insignia be a bunch of halos.
It's definitely like it's leading a little more towards like the whole mythical angle that this show is going for with its design.
And when it comes to like these Aquarion forms, especially with Solar Aquarion, who unsurprisingly you see the most of, is that the special attacks are the other component that makes Aquarion so memorable and out there as a super robot.
Yeah.
You know? Like this may not be a robot that ever gets to like the same level of like overwhelming galactic power as a Getter Emperor or even Mazinger Zero.
Yeah.
Thank God.
I don't think it needs to be, but yeah.
No, it doesn't need to. But you know what it does have that I think gives it a fighting chance?
Yeah.
The fucking Mugen Punch.
The infinite punch. It is exactly as you'd think it would, as the name sounds. It is an infinitely extending punch. It just keeps going and going and going.
You don't need a rocket punch when you could just make your arm as long as possible just to hit a motherfucker. And it even ties in as well to like another concept I did not really I forgot to mention in the prehistory when bringing up like all the different religious and mythical references brought in, is that like there's even elements of like yoga in like the most traditional like Indian origin sense. You know? I mean, if you even remember, you know, like you play Street Fighter and you know what Dalsim's whole deal is, and that he is able to contort his body in horrific ways because of yoga. Yeah, there's a reason for that. Yoga has a connection all the way to Aquarion, and it's even reflected more in some of like the other like abilities that Aquarion is able to demonstrate. But like that is definitely like the most standout like signature move in Aquarion's arsenal, and it makes sense because it's like it's not like it has any other weapons to work with. It's just got its fists and like you know, close quarters combat. It's the other forms that have like a distinct weapon of some kind, such as Aquarion Mars, where the Mars vector machine is basically like the lead in this case, and the predominant color scheme is blue, and it's a lot thinner in frame. Doesn't have like the kind of like the same helmet motif that like the Solar Aquarion does, but at least with Mars, its main method of fighting is with a sword.
They don't have the ridiculous Mugen Punch, but they still have their own like special attacks with it.
Generally conveyed with like I guess you could say as being like a lot more of a graceful kind of looking robot.
Yeah.
Because you look at Solar Aquarion, it's a lot more to kind of reflect like its raw physical strength. It's got a bit of that top heavy look to it. Mars, by comparison, when everything is all combined the way that it is, it's all very slim looking. But the third form, Aquarion Luna, it is its main weapon of attack is a bow and arrow. Oh, I'm sorry. Slight correction. It is a bow and arrow built into its fucking arms that double as machine guns.
Yeah.
Kind of slim as well in the same way that Aquarion Mars is, but I think also because of like who generally ends up being the default pilot for Aquarion Luna, it ends up, I think, being the one form of Aquarion that you could say has like the most like feminine aesthetic to it.
Yeah, I'd say so. It's definitely got more like those features to it compared to the other two.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess one thing to kind of like wrap this up as well for all three Aquarion forms and like how the vector machine specifically combine. This is one slight difference compared to how it is in Get a Robo, and that is it is not all three machines stacked on top of each other, and that's the robot.
Oh,
Instead, I'd already kind of described like what position it takes up. That is because the machines can either be the lower half, the top half, or kind of like the back-mounted wings.
Yeah.
So I guess instead of just a straight pillar, you can look at it more as like each form is like an upside-down L shape when viewed from the side, I guess is the best way to put it. That said, you're definitely not going to get an Aquarion form that is like super different in one form compared to the other two. You know, kind of like how Getter 3 is like is not a bipedal robot in the slightest. You know, it's got, depending on the version of Getter 3, you know, it can either be like tank treads like early on, or it's like multi-legged, well, a combination of both, I suppose.
Yeah.
And when it comes to like other attacks that the forms are capable of, it's important to note the remaining special attacks that you see the various forms of Aquarion do, that is all dependent on their pilots.
Yeah. So
yeah, unlike Getter Robo, where Getter 1, 2, and 3 are always like their respective pilots, we've got a whole cast of teenagers that are going to like swap places as the battle needs.
So at one point, like let's say Aquarion Luna might, instead of using a bow and arrow, might use a giant soccer ball or something like that.
Actually, I think that's technically Mars.
Sorry,
funny enough,
Mars.
when I think about it,
that
yeah,
was Mars. I mixed them up.
Well, then again, I might also be mixing this up with what I'm about to say. But like Luna, depending on like who's piloting it, could either shoot with a bow and arrow or might just like generate and throw out like throwing stars or something like that. Mm-hmm. You know, which still keeps in line with like Luna's entire focus on long range combat. Mm-hmm. But at least when it comes to other mecha, like the only thing that's left are obviously the monsters of the week, since this is a super robot show, and those are the cherubim. They are the giant mechanical like shadow angels that the Aquarion has to fight and stop them from harvesting like the energy of humans. The most common that you always see are like the regular cherubim soldiers, which are like very thin and like cylindrical, I'm going to say, in their limbs. But some do get a bit more interesting, and they're usually identified by, I think, like having a more purple color scheme. And like that like if they're not like white colored like the regular cherubim soldiers, that's how you know that they are like they're the more serious, unique enemies that Aquarion has to figure out their specific gimmicks in order to overcome. And oh boy, their gimmicks are weird, and the way that Aquarion has to solve them a lot of the time gets even weirder.
It gets so weird, y'all have no idea.
And yet, Aquarion Evil, I think, is still the weirdest when it comes to its special attacks.
Well,
which is not an easy feat.
That is not like, that's definitely, you know what? I'll defer to you on that, but that's surprising.
I mean, just to say this without context, there's a special attack in Aquarion Evil in which it is just a Dogeza. It is just the Aquarion getting on its knees and groveling profusely because the person piloting it like upset someone earlier in the episode and was desperately trying to find a way to apologize.
Well, no, I believe you now. I definitely believe you on that. That's so out there. That's insane.
But yeah, that's basically all the mecha that you really get. You know, this again, super robot. This is a far cry from what you get with Macross, where you've got all kinds of variants of like the same base sort of real robot framework. You know, you got our hero robots, and you got your monster of the week robots. Fucking fight, go at it, have fun. So now we got to get into the characters, especially the characters that, you know, as we mentioned, a lot of them end up piloting Aquarion at various points.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of them. There is a lot of teenagers with complicated feelings.
It is a large cast we're talking about here.
Complicated feelings and obviously slight personality disorders, I suppose.
Yeah. All of them have something wrong with them in some way.
And that's why they are perfect for the job.
Yeah.
So we have our hero, Apollo, a redheaded 13-year-old fucking feral child.
He is the kind of guy who will sniff you out like a dog, because that's the kind of character we have here.
And also hits to something that Kawamori was wanting to lean into even more for this series before the rest of the writing staff was like, how about no? We'll explain later in the spoiler section. I am not going to let this episode go live without at least bringing it up somehow.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah, but otherwise, the thing with Apollo is that because of his name and what it's supposed to imply, another major aspect of Aquarion, not just for this anime, but like kind of throughout the series to varying degrees, is the idea of reincarnation. Usually, like reincarnations that occur like along a 12,000 year long cycle. And because of the similarities in name, yes, what the show is getting at very early on and making you think is the case is that Apollo is the reincarnation of Apollonius, the shadow angel who betrayed his kind.
Yeah.
Like everyone in Diva basically refers to like the person that is Apollonius's reincarnation as the solar wing, and is why like basically during the first episode when the Aquarion vector machines crash and Apollo, seeing his friends getting abducted, tries to save them. Naturally, like any hot-blooded super robot pilot, just gets in the fucking cockpit and goes to work.
As you do.
And unsurprisingly, he is very potent in piloting Solar Aquarion, hence, tying in with the fact that he is the solar wing. But also, because of his background beforehand, like all the jokes we make about him being a wild child and sniffing you out, yeah, he is very bestial in nature. He's basically grown up homeless, developing very animalistic instincts in order to survive. He did have like a group of friends, like a gang that he basically kind of had as his family starting out before they got abducted by the Shadow Angels and was basically left with having to work with Diva, basically for the initial goal of he just wants to save his friends, fuck everyone else, but eventually learning to kind of accept Diva and like the other elements as like kind of his new friends as well.
Yeah.
But when he is not in the pilot's seat, you could definitely expect plenty of antics going around where, if he's not getting into physical fights, because physical strength is his element ability, that is the important thing. Like all of like the pilots for Aquarion are referred to as elements, and they have like some manner of like psychic or other physical abnormal ability. Apollo's in this case is his fighting strength. And somehow, like, his ability to just, like, act like an animal and, like, follow your scent, somehow that is not an element's behavior. He just picked up on that naturally.
That's just the thing he does.
And also from something else, but we're not saying.
Yeah, we're not saying that.
Other elements that are of importance are, I'm going to mention these two right at the same time because they're siblings, actually. Sylvia and Sirius de Alicia. Sylvia is the younger sister. Sirius is the older brother. One is a Brocon. The other is convinced that he is the solar wing.
Yeah, I hope you're ready for a lot of Syscon and Brocon in this show, because there's a lot of that.
Yeah, because to go again with like reincarnations being a thing in this anime, Sylvia, like, the way it is presented, least of all because she claims it the loudest over everyone else, is that she is the reincarnation of the human girl that Apollonius fell in love with 12,000 years ago. You can see why the Brocon allegations are really strong with her because of her believing, and also Sirius as well because he's an aristocrat and thinks he's the most important, that yes, of course he would be the reincarnation of Apollonius. But it's obviously not that, and that kind of gets into shit that happens in like the final arc of the anime when more things are revealed, and obviously that's spoilers. So we'll leave you to guess what Sirius's actual deal is and like who he's actually a reincarnation of.
Yeah.
The final, the real details might shock you.
You just have to watch the anime to find out.
But at least bringing these two up, in comparison to Apollo, who is like a very rough-looking wild child, like these two siblings are obviously the exact opposite. Like they come from an aristocratic background. Their parents died like in a house fire, so like they were basically kind of like left by themselves before, being picked up by Diva and like kind of taking the role of being the Earth's savior on their own, like pretty hard for obvious reasons. But at least with these three characters is that they are most often associated as like the Aquarion pilots, even compared to all the remaining elements. Like Apollo is like the pilot for Solar Aquarion, Sirius is the pilot of Aquarion Mars, and Sylvia is the pilot of Aquarion Luna. And when you look at kind of like what their physical expertises are outside of piloting Aquarion itself, that's where it actually lines up, because Sirius, quite an accomplished sword fighter.
Yeah.
And Sylvia also like knows a thing or two about archery. But if any of those three are not piloting a vector machine, you're likely to see any of the other elements like basically take that role. You have Pierre Vieira, I'm assuming I pronounced that correctly, who with that last name in particular, it is directly named after the French soccer player Patrick Vieira, because he's also a soccer player.
Yeah.
And also has way more of an active sex drive.
Oh, boy.
To put it mildly. But he can generate fire with his kicks. And this is what you were talking about. When he is piloting Aquarion, specifically Aquarion Mars, his personality traits are imparted in that he does soccer-based special attacks.
Yeah.
But then others include Reika, who is a girl that is just a bad luck vortex her entire life. Like, she is always hit with such misfortune all the time. And least of all is stressed out early on by the fact that, like, she wants to form a relationship with someone, namely Sirius. But A, Sylvia doesn't want any of that. And B, she keeps holding herself back regardless, because she worries that, like, if she gets into a romantic relationship, her bad luck is going to rub off on them and make them miserable. But even so, like, she still is effective as like an element herself. Like, her main ability, I believe it is like telekinesis with her mind. Other elements include Jun, who is an otaku.
Yeah.
He's the nerd of the group. But he does have at least like the pretty useful ability, all things considered, which is like his mind's eye, like the ability to like see to the core of like any solid object or like directly through other objects and like pinpoint like just kind of like the internal weak points in like an object structure, which can be naturally pretty helpful when figuring out like what the weak point of a particular like cherubim that the Aquarion is fighting, where that is and like how do they strike it. And last of the elements I want to mention is Sugumi. So who's a shy girl with probably the most unfortunate element ability. It's not like the bad luck vortex that is Reika. That is independent of her element ability. No, Sugumi's ability is that she can make things explode when her heart rate gets excited. And unfortunately, that happens a lot with, without her wanting to.
That is the worst ability to have, I think.
Really blessed with suck, that girl is.
Yeah.
There are technically a few more elements, but they do not get nearly as much time with piloting Aquarion like these do. Like there's at least one that's that are twins, Kurtz and Chloe, but like, even though they're technically elements, they're more often than not acting as mission support.
Yeah.
From like the command room. I mean, there's also the Gothic Lolita that is wheelchair bound, who may or may not be a vampire.
Yeah, she's got her own thing. She's mysterious most of the time.
But she's not really able to pilot Aquarion as much as the others because of like her physical constitution is just not that good. Could be the anemia.
Could be that.
Who could say?
Yeah.
Yeah. But obviously, wrapping everything up for people on the side of Diva, I mean, there are other mission support characters that are important, like Sophie or Jean-Jerome George, who is like a stick in the mud who exists pretty much to just get dunked on for being way too self-serious about everything. But really, we need to talk about the best character of Aquarion, and that is Genfudo.
Oh, tell us about Genfudo.
You want the most insane teacher that talks in the most batshit metaphors but is strongly effective at doing so. This is the one. This is the greatest mentor figure in any story, period.
Bro just walks around. He's the walking metaphor. He just talks. That's all he does. And he says, now figure. And he's like so ridiculous and over the top. He's great. Anytime he's on screen, it's like, you're listening. You're listening to what this guy has to say because it's going to be good.
He is going to say things with conviction, and they are going to reuse that exact same key animation of like the camera from like the ground level viewed up as he stomps his foot forward as like a declaration.
Yeah.
But obviously, even then, like he is fairly mysterious. The main thing you know about early on is that he was the founder of Diva, and was specifically the one that like uncovered the vector machines, was uncovered Aquarion 12,000 years later, but somehow disappeared after that unearthing happened. He only came back once the Shadow Angels started attacking for real and was like, all right, this shit's serious. Jean, get the fuck out of my way. I'm back to being Supreme Commander of Diva. My orders are absolute.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even then, it's like, when it gets to, like, the sequel anime after this, Aquarion Evo, you find out, like, oh, you see another character in that is suspiciously similar to Genfudo in, like, pretty much the exact name, just that one letter is changed.
Oh, my God.
And there is a good reason for that. There's a good reason why Fudo is the best fucking character in all of Aquarion. So much so that he transcends this particular anime.
He still continues on. His legacy continues on in other ways, I guess.
Well, at least his legacy continued in Evil.
Yeah,
it unfortunately did not in any of the others after it.
It would have been funny if he was just in every other Aquarion thing. Just with
I wish that would have made my time watching Myth of Emotion so much better. Jesus Christ. But anyway, like those are our main cast. The Shadow Angels do have characters of their own, but like there's only very, very few I'm willing to talk about because of, some of them you just don't get to see as often, or they're not nearly as important to like the characters that we had just described. For instance, we have Toma, who is basically our main antagonist, not the leader of the Shadow Angels, but the one that is tasked with the operation that the Shadow Angels are undertaking, where they are harvesting humans to like basically embed them within their tree of life to absorb their energy. And all of it is for the purpose of reviving their entire race.
Yeah.
Because, like, there's only a few proper Shadow Angels around that have, like, been able to reawaken after 12,000 years. And they need more energy to get everyone back up and, like, running again. And Toma is the Shadow Angel that was in love with Apollonius. They were boyfriends until Apollonius decided... Not necessarily that he no longer liked Toma, that he thought he was bad and hated him. Quite the opposite. He still loved Toma. He just loved Cillian more.
Yeah, also a couple of things. One, yes, he is kind of like an ex. He is your ex who's just coming after you, kind of. And two, wow, we haven't talked about it much, but there's actually bi and gay representation here. In not a jokey way.
Yeah. I guess maybe a rewatch would have like better reinformed this for me, but I almost like wonder if they're even so much if the societal construct of gender is even a thing among Shadow Angels.
I would not know. I can't say one way or another.
I mean, I think it would make sense for me if like they weren't held down by like such obvious like kind of like binary categorization like we already do. But also kind of shame on Apollonius for not being super forward thinking and like making a polyamorous triad between the three of them. But whatever, that would probably be a very, very different show.
It'd be a very different one, that's for sure.
Yeah. That said, because of this, obviously, the Shadow Angels know what jealousy is, because and envy, because obviously Toba, even after all these years, still pines for Apollonius in some way, which is why, he takes an interest in, like, going after Apollo, especially because everyone's going going with the idea that they think this guy has to be the reincarnation of Apollonius. This guy has to be my long dead boyfriend. He has to be.
Yeah.
But also there's another shadow angel that feels jealousy, and that's Otoha, largely because I think it's like she likes Toma. She's trying to be like the new romantic partner for him. But you can kind of tell that like where some of the tension is that because Toma still deep down does not want to give up on Apollonius, even if he is reincarnated in a new form.
Yeah.
Otoha is very clearly like clinging to Toma himself.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Yeah, and they're not really present much in the way of fighting. Usually, as far as like the majority of time that you see them is in the Shadow Angels' home base of Atlantia, and like a lot of like scheming and talking about like their plans and motivations. One Shadow Angel that does get a lot more involved with the fights and like creating some utilizing some of the more advanced cherubim is Moroha. Is kind of like a purple-horned Shadow Angel, but he is basically like the one member of the villains who is like, he loves to fight. He just wants to get in there and like lead the fight himself rather than just like hang back, although he still ends up having to do that sometimes. There's other Shadow Angels that we could get into, but it's like, again, like some of them are so rarely seen. And there is one specific Shadow Angel that is basically part of the final story arc that is heavily filled with spoilers. That getting into it now would kind of take away some of like the reveal and like emotional impact that happens when that particular angel gets introduced. So with characters out of the way, why do we recommend Genesis of Aquarion? Yeah. Well, I mean, least of all, because of the fact we're Get a Robo fans, just seeing any combiner super robot that takes after the triple combiner rules established by that series is really fun to see. I like that we got a version of that also is like reflective of its director's unique design ideas.
Yeah, which is fun to see.
With this being an anime by Studio Satellite, they were known very early on for adopting 3D CG for animating mechanical objects like robots, like decades before everyone else decided to get on the bandwagon for that because it was cheaper. You know, kind of regrettably so. I guess it's like, as much as I like the stuff that Kawamori has worked on and think that like his studio has made a better case for compositing CG into anime as early as they did, I do kind of begrudge them just the slightest bit for at least opening the path for everyone else giving up on 2D animation for mecha. But that's another topic. At least for this anime, even in 2005, the shading and animation on all of like the giant robot fights like is very, very good. Like, it doesn't really look particularly jarring the way that like a lot of its other contemporaries during its time would have.
It definitely doesn't look as bad as most 3D animation as at the time, I think.
Yeah. I would still say that it was like a step, it was just another step on the road for like Satellite improving it to like its best possible level.
Yeah.
Because they did Macross Zero before this, and that was the first Macross anime where they did 3D CG for the mecha. And that obviously was like, you know, animated well enough, but obviously like the shading techniques they were using at that time were not nearly as good as what were present in Aquarion. And Aquarion's a TV anime. It didn't even have an OVA budget.
Yeah.
But another part of recommending this, and possibly a somewhat controversial statement, for as much as this anime is portrayed in a way that's very romantic and invites audiences to kind of take the more romantic and spiritual aspects of it like seriously, because I've definitely seen people that have gotten into it because they were invested in like the characters and like what was being presented, and seeing like these romantic relationships like reach their natural conclusion. Aquarion is at its best when it's throwing goofy ass shit in your face as like a total contrast.
Yeah, do not go into this show expecting it to be serious all the time, and there will be lots of tonal shifts. Just accept it. Just accept that you're going to get a lot of that, and just roll with it.
There's a lot where even if the characters are taking it seriously, which means by extension you want to take it seriously, it's all them taking like such ridiculous things like super seriously, like the various metaphors and lessons from Genfudo, Aquarion's different attacks. I mean, for fuck's sake, like the orgasmic sounds that everyone makes when they're combining in Aquarion.
Yeah.
Like, the plot at least does remember to, like, treat things seriously when it is, like, actually on the main story path again and, like, trying to wrap things up by its conclusion. Its most memorable moments, even after all of these years, for both of us, still are the episodes where they are best described by basically just saying it's like, it's this thing, and when you describe it to someone, they give you weird looks.
Yeah, that's one of the more memorable aspects of it are the episodes where you just describe an episode to someone.
Yeah.
And it's just like the most ridiculous thing in the world.
It's still a really enjoyable ride all the same. Like, if you learn to accept all of what it's going into, you can definitely, like, come away appreciating both, like, the story and character development that goes along and all the antics that happen around them in, like, equal measure. Now, because this podcast can only really talk about Genesis of Aquarion and not the rest of the series in detail, this might as well be, like, the best opportunity to give, like, the quick rundown on, like, the other subsequent entries, since I have, you know, if not watched all of them, I have at least, like, seen enough to kind of, like, give, like, a general idea of what they're about. So, like, you know, in this host's opinion, the two-part OVA that came out a couple years after this, that's like a full alternate take of Aquarion. If you like the idea of Aquarion but wanted to take in just a bit more seriously and, like, without any of, like, with a lot less of the tonal whiplash, that actually might be the best kind of introduction to get you on board with it. Because you're still getting Aquarion doing what it does in battle. But because it's a two-parter, you're not getting, like, the episodes that are dedicated to, like, whatever weird lesson Genfudo comes up with that he wants the kids to basically take to heart in order to improve themselves as people.
Yeah.
I mean, for fuck's sake, Aquarion punches the earth to heal it. That alone should sell you on it.
And as for the other shows, I can't really say one way or another because I've never watched them, so I'll leave it up to you.
Just that, I would say in contrast to what I described with the OVA, where if you like the idea of Aquarion, but maybe don't want to deal with, like, the tonal shifts to being, like, overwhelmingly goofy, Aquarion Evil, I think, is worth watching if you are like me and you are really into the goofy off-the-wall shit and care more about that than whatever, like, serious plot it's trying to get into. Least of all because Evil is still directed by Kawamori and written by him. But both this anime and Evil have him on the writing credits, by the way. And Evil in particular, I think, has him, like, as, like, having full authorial control on the writing itself, which explains why the plot makes some very specific reveals that even at the time, like, when I was spoiled on a particular fact about it, I was like, that sounds hilarious. But then my friend was like, yeah, people are divided on it. Some people think it's funny, others hate it. But you know what? At least it's still better than the Aquarion anime that came after it, because Kawamori was not directing or writing it, and you can clearly tell how lacking it is. Like, I only watched the first episode of Aquarion Logos before going, this is so self-serious and boring, I am checked out. And then there was Aquarion Myth of Emotions, which aired actually this very year as part of the 20th anniversary. And as far as new mecha anime this year that we watched, obviously, like, kind of as we've been recording these episodes, you watched the new Gundam, you watched G-Quacks.
I did, yeah.
I watched Myth of Emotions. You clearly got the better deal. Yeah, you clearly made the better choice compared to me.
Apparently I did, yeah. It doesn't sound like a very good show.
For what it's worth, Myth of Emotions is better than Logos because it's at least, like, trying to hang its hat on some other weird ideas and commit to them. But 12 episodes and just, like, again, that fucking format, it is not enough time to really, like let the characters simmer and, like, really lean into any kind of, like, lighter moments that could kind of hit that same tonal balance that the original Aquarion did, of, like, having, like, a plot with serious stakes involved and, like, characters that are navigating, you know, like, very real emotions, but also like being able to understand like when it's time to just have fun and like do something goofy. I don't know, maybe have the cast theorize about whether or not one of their own is a vampire.
Yeah. Or
or maybe like some of the other episodes that we'll get into for our spoiler section. But before that, to wrap it up, an unfortunate thing is I was looking up details as far as where to watch Aquarion.
Yeah.
Years and years ago, you could have watched it through Funimation on their channel because they licensed it. In fact, that's how I watched it and Aquarion Evil in their entirety for the first time, like, a decade ago.
That's so long ago.
I know 10 years is less time than 20, but that still feels longer.
It does.
But obviously Funimation, they're no longer Funimation anymore. You know, they got absorbed into Crunchyroll. And, you know, in the past few years, you could have watched it on Crunchyroll. But now even that's fucking gone. Like, you go to the Aquarion page on Crunchyroll, there are no fucking videos up there for you to watch. So, yeah. Between that or, like, you know, if you need your physical copies and want to hunt down secondhand Blu-ray releases, you know, the only option left is pretty clear. Sail the high seas.
Yeah, you're
know what
a
to do.
resourceful person. You can probably figure it out.
So yeah, we got that out of the way.
We got that out of the way.
Now to transition into our spoiler discussion.
Yeah.
We got 2 highlight episodes, unsurprisingly fairly isolated from one another, but that works because, like we said, those isolated episodes tend to be the goofiest ones, and the goofiest episodes are the ones that like we remember the most fondly. You could either join us on the other side to kind of hear us describe like these kind of batshit series of events, or if you're already sold on everything we've talked about, like fucking stop this episode and just go get a hold of the series and watch it.
Yeah, if you
it's a good time.
If you need any more convincing, then we might get you during the spoiler cast. Which I'll just say aren't really plot important episodes, but they are episodes we chose to talk about for various reasons.
We'll even slip in a bonus spoiler that's related to Evil because it has like huge ramifications on how you contextualize Genesis of Aquarion.
Yeah.
God damn it, I want to share it so bad because it's so fucking funny.
It's hilarious. Yeah, we'll just leave you with that tease for now.
So see you on the other side.
See you on.
Nenshin! Gatai! Go! Aquarion!
So Art, let's talk about the dangers of gooning.
Yes, episode 15, Aquarion's First Love. This is an episode all about Pierre, and more importantly, an episode about the dangers of being a sex addict.
This is not a joke. We are not even kidding here.
Yeah, sex addict, chronic masturbation. It's a lot of things that it'll remind you of.
Yeah.
But all we really know how this episode starts is that, you know, with this being an episode about Pierre, our resident, like, happy-go-lucky soccer player, is that he gets a letter from his family, and doesn't look like he's taken too well to the news from it after reading it. Even though it sounds happy, his brother's getting married, his family is otherwise safe, even with all the Shadow Angel attacks going on. Also, Apollo's being given a lesson about the kanji for person, but he doesn't seem to care about it.
That's not going to... I'm sure that's not going to come up later or something.
Yeah, that intro happens. The OP plays, which is still Genesis of Aquarion even at this point.
Yeah.
Still beautiful all these years later.
Still a good opening.
Cut to immediately after a fight with a cherubim with Pierre leading the charge, cleans it up so fast that like as soon as he's back to the hangar... he looks like he went really, really hard. That like he's seen, like he's had to go to succubus or something. I don't know. It's the kind of haggard that looks like again. I made the succubus comment because it looks like the jokes that are made, like, you know, someone had sex with like a fiend of that nature.
Yeah.
That it would drain them so hard that you see them becoming physically emaciated.
Bro is just gone. He is like done.
Which is wild because he is in full hot-blooded mode when he is in the pilot seat.
Yeah.
But as the episode goes on, Pierre does kind of going things about normal, sitting in a cafe later, you know, in class. He's got 2 cups in his hand. He's shoving them together, putting the bottom end of one into the open end of the other. I'm sure this reminds me of something, but I can't quite tell what.
I can't either. I'm sure the subtlety here, it's very subtle and nobody can get it.
Like a brick to the face. Because, yes, of course, with that sarcasm that I was covering it in, everything we said about how this anime relates gatai to having sex, this episode is where it leans the hardest into it. And,
By far.
It's not the episode where a person asks someone what's it like to gatai, with the same energy that a curious teen asks what's it like to have sex.
Yeah.
A joke, which, by the way, also gets repeated in Evol. Just to bookend the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
But this episode is all about the sex addiction, and Pierre has become a victim of it to the point where even in class, Sophie is giving a lecture about the process of what happens during a merge. He during a gatai, he hears the word, his name gets called to to describe what happens, but he takes it as a question, to which he declares, "Yes, ma'am, I want to do it."
Oh, there is something very real about the way he's staring at all the girls and just thinking about gataiing. It's like such a teenage boy thing to do, but they take it to such another level. It's like, I want to gatai! I need it!
Yeah, and all still with enough restraint to not make it suddenly feel like crass or low humor about it. Like, he doesn't stand up and then suddenly everyone can see his rock hard erection poking through his pants.
No.
He doesn't have that, because the show understands that it's already cashing its checks on the allusions to sex, that it doesn't need to have the super obvious body language that we often associate with it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And even more credit as well to this anime with its tonal shifts, even during this moment, after that whole, feat of embarrassment, and then Pierre later going into the simulator cockpit to get his high of combining, that it stops playing it up for laughs, and you realize, no, this is an actual problem, and people are genuinely starting to feel worried for him. And all of this is because he misses his girl too much.
Yeah.
His first love, by the way, who's getting married to his brother. That's why he feels so hollow inside.
So he's replacing that hollowness with gataiing, which is just use any kind of sexual metaphor you want for this. I'm sure most of it works.
And the extra thing about that as well is that the letter wasn't even announcing that Esperanza decided that she was going to get married to Pierre's brother, Lopez. It was already established before Pierre joined Diva that she loved Lopez more.
Yeah.
And that is to explain why throughout this entire series, Pierre is also very flirtatious and is constantly trying to, get very friendly with any other woman that is able to accept him.
Yeah.
It's just that being reminded that she still loves his brother and that they're getting married soon is what pushes him over the edge into this sex addiction spiral.
Yeah.
And requires Diva to basically put him into a padded cell for his protection. But oh no, the Shadow Angels are attacking, and this time in his hometown.
Oh no. How convenient.
And Esperanza's there on the day that they were supposed to be married.
Yeah, of course.
Who could have foreseen this?
Oh no, on the episode about him.
Spoilers, it's us. We could have seen this because we have experience watching these kind of anime.
Yeah.
So everything going into the second half is Aquarion fighting its new cherubim, which has been designed by Moroha and the other Shadow Angel, who's mainly an inventor. I forget his name. But the main gimmick is that it is two separate entities where their actual core weak point, is able to not only move around the body it is in, but also hop between bodies metaphysically. So the idea is that it could just keep avoiding attacks and direct hits from Aquarion as long as it wants, rendering it practically invincible.
Yeah, and it causes them a lot of trouble.
Yeah, because it requires basically shuffling through like all the different elements that are in reserve to use their different special attacks.
Yeah.
Yes, it's another one of those super robot style episodes where it is like we can't deal any damage. We just got to cycle through all our moves and see what works.
Mm-hmm.
At least with Apollo, he's a fun character to see in battle because even when we're like over halfway through the series where he is more where he feels like he is now more of a part of Diva than he is at the start.
Yeah.
He's still a wild child at his core, and his first instinct is to just look at whatever's closest and fucking punch it.
Because that's of course that would be his first instinct, to just be like, I'm gonna punch it now.
Yeah, just like even his wording is like he's just looking between the two and is like, out of hell with it, punch. But obviously, yeah, like we said, like they're cycling through all the different elements, which means that because of Diva's advanced technology, they can literally teleport out a pilot at any time to replace with another. And unfortunately, I forgot how the change element function works, where, when the pilot gets swapped back to base, on the return trip, they come back naked, covered in slime.
God.
Which also means the person that gets teleported into the vector machine is basically getting teleported into the suit that the person was previously wearing. You think they would all have their own individual plug suits as like a courtesy, but I guess teleportation technology has not gotten that advanced yet.
No, we gotta really drive home the metaphor we're going here somehow.
Just exhausted, all covered in jizz.
Yeah,
actually, it's probably more vulgar than I think this anime intends for, but
probably.
Whatever.
They're the ones who are covered the characters in slime.
But yes. All the elements keep getting knocked out. This Pierre episode is obviously leading to the idea that he is the one person that has the best chance of like beating it. They need Pierre to do it.
Yeah.
And luckily, our best character of the show arrives to let him do it, but not before giving him a short lesson about a fucking kanji.
That's right. It's time for a Genfudo lesson.
Yep, bringing back the kanji for person that was shown at the very start of this episode. And to its credit, the lesson that is being given about it is like, it pays off super well in a way that I think lines up perfectly with what Kawamori's described of just blending serious and silliness and like in like such equal measure, because to describe the whole lesson with like the kanji for person and even describing it, I mean, whatever, we have a screen cap at the beginning of this episode that basically shows it, but like, it's essentially two strokes, one large one and then a small one that like basically how it's described is that the reason it's supposed to represent a person is that one interpretation is that someone's defined as a person based on like the support that it is like given by those around them, which is like the smaller stroke is essentially supporting the big stroke.
Yeah.
But Genfudo basically comes in to be like, actually, I think that interpretation's fucking bullshit, because what happens when that support isn't there? Tears the paper in half, leaving the bigger stroke with nothing, which is what Pierre is right now.
He's nothing. It's the most not the most straightforward way to tell him, but if it works, it works.
Yeah, and I mean, what you wrote down, I think is like a good representation of what everyone else would probably be feeling the first time when they're being overwhelmed, and just going, yes, all right, I understand. Doesn't understand anything.
That's me every time he goes through his lessons. I'm like, I get it. I don't get it.
But Pierre kind of realizes what Fudo is getting at, which is a real person has to be able to support themselves first.
Yeah.
And that's basically what is able to get, least of all because Fudo just leaves the fucking door open to the cell after he leaves. Pierre just gets up, runs to the command bridge right before Jerome is about to send in, like, a fucking pilot that doesn't even have a name or distinct character trait. Like, this is how bad the battle has gotten. We are needing to, like, just pull extras out of our ass to, like, throw into the fire.
Yeah.
But no, Pierre just comes in, like, literally jumps somersaults into the seat to get teleported in, and now the fight is firing on all cylinders. The gatai happens between all three of them, and this one has like a huge flame motif. And I think this is the part that makes it especially good, considering that we know how flirtatious Pierre can get.
Yeah.
That he probably would prefer if he was gataiing with two other women, but instead he gets Apollo and Sirius. and they are probably the bros that he needs the most to kind of like share his passion with in order to win this fight, because they can feel the fire in their souls as they combine, and as the Genesis of Aquarion theme is playing. And Pierre's just overwhelmed with passion and dribbles the fucking cherubim into space like a soccer ball.
And do we hear him shout out, dribble, 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 the entire time?
Yeah, he's dribbling. Apollo and Sirius are like hot-blooded yelling alongside him. And at the final kick of it all, he climaxes.
Yeah, literally.
Before falling back down. Like, this is a screen cap, 100%. This is going in the video anime version. Just look at his fucking expression.
Just look at it. The man has the best climax of his life right there.
And unfortunately, this destroys like that one body of the cherubim, because again, there were two. But Pierre's burnt out so much of his energy, he's in mortal danger of becoming permanently catatonic. And even so, he refuses to go. Even his co-pilots refuse to let Diva like override the Gatai sequence and like have them eject, because I'm going to say that to continue with this sex metaphor even harder, Apollo and Sirius understand more than ever that they need to give Pierre some space for his aftercare.
Yeah.
Like, this is a man that you cannot force him to do anything else right now, lest that it damages him. You need to give him the space to stand back up on his 2 feet and, like, find his motivation.
Yeah.
And that is super important, because he needs to support himself first before he can look for another woman to give him additional support. And you know what? As soon as he sees Esperanza is still alive, and that there's a chance to save her, that is basically the wake-up call he needs to get back on his 2 fucking feet. And we get the end of Genfudo's lesson regarding the kanji for person, that a person that is able to support themselves can only then become truly great, does a horizontal stroke through it, turning the kanji for person to the kanji for great. This goes beyond simple wordplay. This is fucking word art.
He sure made it into it.
Least of all because Aquarion Mars stands up and forms the pose of the kanji for great.
Yeah.
It's like 2 feet, arms spread, wide open, fucking ready to tackle the day. And oh boy, Pierre is ready to fucking finish this battle, because, oh yeah, dribbling that cherubim into space was not the end of the fight.
No.
Pierre's back to his old self and deals the killing blow with like a triple threat of soccer-themed moves in a sports arena.
That's the most ridiculous way you could have done it, but it's perfect. It's perfect.
And of course, Esperanza is safe, you know, especially because like you saw her kind of like underneath some rubble, and like Pierre's siblings, struggling to get her out. But Aquarion, naturally with its big size, was able to get rid of the rubble, deal with the Shadow Angel, save their lives, and is like, gives them like a nice gesture, especially with like all the moves he was doing beforehand, that Esperanza was able to tell, oh yeah, that was Pierre inside of Aquarion. They thank Aquarion. One of the few times I think you see like the kind of Japanese superhero staple of like, you get to see the people that are genuinely saved by the hero, and you see them thanking the hero.
Yeah.
Like that is very heartwarming to see, especially because of it being, not just the girl he loved, but also Pierre learning that like, yeah, I'm not going to let myself get down bad knowing that I can't have you again.
Yeah.
Just as long as you're happy, I'm happy.
Yeah, it's in a very roundabout way, this episode is actually just about letting go and moving on. And just like someone is just like, you could find a way to fill your emptiness in your heart in other ways that are more constructive, I guess.
Yeah, like getting tickets for like for a movie date or something, and asking any of the girls if they want to come along.
Yeah.
There'll be other girls that he'll likely get a chance with, and with how the show tends to frame it, like the most likely candidate by the end is Chloe. Yeah. But I mean, I think that's a bit more obvious when we get into our next episode. But until then, Pierre has recovered. He's back to his old self, and it's a good thing we don't have to worry about another chronic Gattaire in our midst. Oh, god damn it, June!
Remember, kids, to gatai in moderation.
Yes. Especially because it's June having like a conversation with Sophia, like after this whole affair.
Yeah.
And is like, yeah, good thing we'll never really have a situation like that again. After all, it was mostly contingent on, Pierre's entire personality, just because his serotonin is his amount when gatai is so much higher than everyone else's. No way that could happen to anyone else. And then June just like by himself, like stares wistfully as he grabs 2 cups and starts shoving them together.
Of course, the nerd would be thinking about that too.
Yeah, because he sure as hell's not gonna get any.
Nope, that's an episode that's probably never going to happen.
I mean, again, as far as like, if not full-on pairings, then at least like decent chemistry. Like the one that he obviously has like the best chance with is Tsugumi. Mm-hmm. And that's even with like the health hazard of her heart rate causing things to randomly explode.
Yeah,
whatever. That was Aquarion's first love. Again, just because of like the absurdity of gatai being a metaphor for sex pushed to its absolute like breaking point. That's obviously why it's partly memorable. The other being that Pierre really is just the MVP as far as like doing some of the wildest shit in Aquarion just ever, really. Mm-hmm. Like it's some of the best short of the actual Mugen Punch related like abilities and like tricks that Apollo manages to do in other episodes.
Yeah.
But we'll jump a few episodes ahead. This is our second highlight episode and another one of the all-time bests of this show, Cosplay of the Soul.
Oh yeah. You might have noticed we're not talking about any of the plot episodes, that we're just talking about the weird ones.
And again, this isn't to say that the actual plot episodes in and of themselves are bad.
No, they're not.
But how this episode starts, it's basically like at the end of an earlier battle where unfortunately like a number of humans have been abducted by shadow angels and successfully like taken back to Atlantia for harvest. And because of failing to save all those people, Apollo, Sirius, and Sylvia are all bickering at each other, trying to blame who's who for like, for fucking up the most. Mm-hmm. And Genfudo, not wanting to see this go on, has a way to solve this, and it's an idea only someone as batshit crazy as him could ever come up with. When you return, I want you to become one another.
Yeah, that's right. He just wants them to be the other person. That's what the episode title is like hinting at.
Also, this episode is like after the point when the anime switches to the second opening. Mm-hmm. Go Tight is still a banger of an OP, even if it's never going to be as memorable as Genesis of Aquarion.
Yeah.
But like you said, as the episode title was suggesting, everyone has to cosplay as each other under Genfudo's orders. Mm-hmm. And basically like the kind of like the way that everyone realizes this is what's supposed to happen is that the otaku June first comes in cosplaying as Tsugumi. Physically, I think he could pass fine enough. Character-wise, he is doing a horrible impression that I think is, I understand why I would be causing Tsugumi such distraught.
I don't think groping your fake breasts is a good look, my man.
Yeah, that's the sort of thing where if someone is like doing that as their way of trying to imitate like a lady, I think that clearly is just the case of like they really do not understand and is just more, that is clearly a sign that they are still a dude at their very core.
Yeah. Because
they're way more curious about that. And there's at least, there are other ways you could go about finding out how breasts feel. Mm-hmm. The first step is to actually become a girl.
It's true. You could just do that. It's not as hard.
Or you can find a girl who is like trusting of you and is totally open with the idea of letting you feel up her tits.
That too.
Those are valid options than stuffing your chest with melon bread and thinking that that's the same thing.
And it is funny how Apollo susses that out immediately. That, it's bread. I can sniff that out because I'm a dog.
Food? More food. Give me the food.
Yeah.
Except that, but alas, he doesn't get to eat the melons because Tsugumi makes the melons explode.
Of course he does.
But it's after this kind of embarrassing display that we do get like the more proper explanation of what this exercise is about, courtesy of Sophia cosplaying as Genfudo. Mm-hmm. Because I don't even think she needed to learn anything from these lessons that this exercise is meant to teach. I'm pretty sure she just wanted to dress like Genfudo for the hell of it.
I think so. She does look pretty good in that suit, but yeah.
Yeah. She rocks the big coat pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
And like everything about it it's based around the theory of like sometimes you're not even aware of what your own worst traits are until they are actually pointed out at you.
Yeah.
With probably the most effective way of doing it is to basically have the equivalent of like essentially someone mirroring you and doing something that like makes you go, oh fuck, do I actually sound like that?
Yeah, am I an asshole? It's little.
And at least to kind of like get everyone even more convinced early on that, you know, like it or not, they have to do it. This further proves that even if Pierre's not the best character, he's at least the top 3. Because he is gung-ho willing to start dressing like all the girls. And I think, like, you know, barring the hairy legs that they kind of, like, that the camera places shots on, I think he'd do pretty well as a drag queen, all things considered.
He is very convincing.
Because he dresses as Chloe, he dresses as Sylvia, Reika, like all as many of the other characters as he can, because June already had a bunch of the outfits pre-made, because of course the otaku would have the resources to make cosplay outfits.
Of course he'd do
and
that.
it's just all the rapid fire impersonations that Pierre does that everyone else in the group realizes, fuck, that actually is us.
Mm-hmm.
God damn it, we're trapped into doing this bullshit.
Yeah,
Fine, we'll do it.
He actually got us shit.
Now the cosplay swap order has been established. Pierre and Chloe will swap. Mm-hmm. Reika and Sylvia also swap. And lastly, you can imagine where this is going.
Yeah.
Sirius and Apollo have to swap.
Oh boy.
The two most tonal opposites. The two people that, even after all this time, still kind of hate each other.
Yeah, but they gotta swap now.
And you could tell that Apollo is arguably the worst at doing this.
Yeah. Oh, he is terrible at it.
He's wearing like the outfit that Sirius usually has, except it is so ill-fitting, like a way bigger size than he has, and he clearly does not know the first thing about how Sirius like actually behaves and speaks. Is that it's more like a parody of like very vapid noblemen that like wax philosophical about things that make no sense.
Yeah. Like, he's trying, but he couldn't help himself. And even to the point where he's like, I'm going to snip this rose, then I'm going to eat it.
Yeah, that's totally what Sirius would do.
Yeah, that's...
I mean, even, like, as this exercise is going on, you see Sirius just, like, hiding around the corner, not even dressed as Apollo, because he is, like... He still feels like that this is beneath him and is, like, upset every time he sees Apollo do something that he knows that he himself would not do.
Yeah.
That he has to get like pulled back by everyone else. It's like, no, God damn it, just don't interrupt this.
Don't interrupt this. Just go along with it. It's painful, we
Yeah.
know, but still.
But you know, until this rewatch, I'd actually forgotten what the actual height difference was between Apollo and the rest of the cast, especially Reika.
Oh yeah.
And after going back through this episode, I am blessed to re-witness him getting a taste of tall girl supremacy. Reika as Sylvia just gives him the biggest goddamn hug. Face first into the place that, like, all adolescents wish they could get their hands on. Yeah, there's even some extra stuff with like you do get to see some of like Chloe and Pierre like acting as each other, but even then there's still a bit of like a character break where even Pierre is impressed with a girl crossplays as him.
Yeah,
like you can see a bit of his ego still shining through, even though he's supposed to play the role of someone else. Like he is the character that is having the most fun with this nonsense.
Oh, he's enjoying it.
Huge respect to him. I could never pull it off.
Yeah.
Oh, but wait. Did you think Sirius was actually abstaining from this exercise the whole time? Psych. He actually had Apollo's clothes on underneath his suit the entire time.
Whoa.
And pulls it off Yakuza style. And oh no, he's hot.
he manages to fit better in Apollo's costume than Apollo does in his.
He imitates the sniffing, and then, like, for a moment, you can see he's actually getting the most into Apollo's character, trying to taunt Apollo, which then leads into, like, probably like the best like turnaround quite possibly, where Apollo, realizing that like because he's short, he needs something to sell what he's about to say next, sees there's just a stone next to him, stands on it to gain height so that he is above Sirius, looks at him and says to his face, disgusting.
Whoa.
So Sirius is Apollo in this case. Apollo is Sirius. Sirius as Apollo is trying to make fun of Apollo as him because like he obviously hates Apollo by default. But it gets turned around on him, like both as Apollo and as Sirius. Does that make sense? Does this count as a cell phone?
It makes sense. It makes sense well enough. It's well enough. I don't know. Listen, this is just what the show is doing to us.
Yeah, I know. It's like trying to describe this is like trying to describe. Well, actually, though, I actually realized I have an easier time like giving the joke description for what the plot of Face Off is about. Yeah. Which is that it's about John Travolta pretending to be Nick Cage, who's pretending to be John Travolta.
Yeah, there you go. You got it.
This one is at least a bit more, it's a bit harder to keep track of, but again, I tend to look at it as like Sirius thought that like he was getting one over on Apollo in this charade, but in the end he realized, oh wait, he's still Apollo and Sirius at the same time. He's getting dunked on by both at once, I guess. Whatever. Reina is watching this from afar and has gotten up out of her wheelchair to criticize the fuck out of them. Oh, wait, she could walk? I thought she couldn't. Surprise, motherfucker, it's Gothic Lolita Genfudo!
Bro just wanted an excuse to wear a Gothic Lolita dress, and you know what? Go for it, bro. You can do it.
I imagine he also managed to change his size, like, to match Reina's height, even though that would make no physical sense.
I mean, that he kind of just changes reality around him subtly in a lot of ways.
I mean, it's true. He closes his hand and then, like, uncurls it to reveal a frog in his palm, which ties into today's lesson. And, okay, every time we do episodes for this podcast, I think I've mentioned this to you before multiple times, is that, like, I always start feeling like, man, I want to rewatch these shows that we talk about in full because they're so good. Mm-hmm. I want to do the same for Aquarion, but not for the same reasons as everything else. I want to rewatch these so I can, like, take note of every single one of Genfudo's lessons and put them in a tier list to figure out which one is the most batshit.
God, if we had, like...
And the one about the frog is, like... Yeah. I think more straightforward than the one about the kanji in episode 15, but it's, I think, more absurd given the whole cosplay theme that is going on around it. Mm-hmm. Because he whips out a frog and has this to say as part of his criticism: once a frog, always a frog. No frog ever tries to be a frog.
Bro, what are you talking about?
I don't know, but the shot, like, it goes to a side view and it just lingers there before it, like, shows like the mid-episode title card. Mm-hmm. Like, everyone is stunned silence, like, bro, what the fuck?
Yeah, what the fuck? It'll make sense later on, but you know.
Yeah, everyone at least quickly kind of clues into, like, what it was Fudo's actually trying to get at, and that is, you know, the problem with how, like, the cosplayers were treating the exercise is that they were only playing the role based on, like, what they have known about each other from, like, an outward appearance point of view, you know? Yeah. Because everyone was dressing as each other and basically doing what felt like a kind of like a distillation, sometimes parody of, like, what the other person is supposed to be. Yeah. None of them were actually going... I'm going to say they were not going the method actor route where they were trying to fully embody, like, every aspect of, like, their waking being and, like, mindset. Yeah, yeah. Because it all leads to Sirius kind of just wondering, is like, how the fuck could I even, like, be even more like Apollo? Why would I even want to be any more like that piece of shit? Yeah. And, Reika just shows up with the suggestion of, I mean, you could try hunting for animals. I mean, that's what I've seen Apollo do in the woods behind the Diva headquarters. Mm-hmm. And Suja starts seeing, like, it's mainly these four. It's Apollo, Sirius, Sylvia, and Reika, where they start taking Genfudo's words to heart, like, pretty seriously, that, you know, they're not dressed as each other, but they start thinking about trying to get into like true inner mindset of each other that they undergo such a stark, like accurate transformation that it's terrifying.
Yeah, we're to the point where they start seeing each other's like tragic backstory or something.
Like Reika, for whatever reason, starts in imagining like the memory of Sylvia and Sirius's parents dying as hers.
Yeah.
And like basically like she starts becoming the Brokon of all things. And Sylvia ends up getting hit with tons and tons of misfortune as she chases after Sirius, not from the perspective of being the little sister, but the girl that still like wants to have a romantic relationship. Apollo, I think, weirdly enough, is like his transformation is arguably the most subtle, because you just only see it happen when he sneaks into Sirius's room and starts, you know, like he starts dropping like the fake noble philosophizing bullshit and actually starts acting like genuinely more serious the way that that he actually is supposed to.
Yeah.
And of course you see Sirius, you know, even in his full like suit getup, he is on all fours crawling through the forest, sniffing prey out, trying to find, you know, food to forage for. But then that all gets interrupted when a Shadow Angel attack begins. Apollo, Sirius, and Sylvia, you know, they started as Aquarion's pilots, and physically they still are.
Yeah. But
now they're Sirius, Apollo, and Reika, respectively.
Yep.
I promise this one at least makes more sense than the Sirius and Apollo exchange that happened during the first half.
It does. It makes a little more sense. It's still complicated, but you know, you get it. You can get it.
And to make matters even more complicated, the enemy this time is a mimic of Aquarion.
Oh, God. It's so funny to me how I think in any other show, the enemy mimicking the main heroes would be the focus. But this is barely that. It's just, it barely factors here.
Barely anyone talks about it or like does anything to like formulate like a complex plan in relation to the current situation of these three chucklefucks have their minds swapped with someone else.
Yeah.
Because as it turns out, this is kind of a disappointment. I would have liked to see the actual Aquarion like fight with like these three characters mimicking each other.
Yeah.
But no, when they try to Gatai, it just does not work at all. Because the way that the lesson is supposed to close out is that, you know, it all comes back to what Genfudo said. Once a frog, always a frog. You know, like they certainly have done a good job of no longer trying to be the other person, but just being them. But the thing that's more important than simply being the other person is being yourself. You know, the frog just has to be the frog. And I love even as well, like, how the realization kicks in when all it takes is Sirius as Apollo to just basically go, like, this is ridiculous. Stop mimicking us. Wait. Mimicking? And that's basically like the moment it clicks in their heads, like, wait, why are we still doing this?
Yeah.
We already understand a lot better what each other's, like, personal traumas and, like, pasts are already. We now have kind of gotten that problem out of the way, that it has now informed who they are normally in a more positive light, and that it leads into kind of like another metaphor of, like, when I was taking all these notes, I was kind of half paying attention to, honestly, because I was already way too focused on the logistics of, like, all these characters trying to cosplay and mimic each other and the whole once a frog, always a frog bullshit. That Gen also goes on about, like, some shit about how, like, 3 arrows, you know, even when firing in unison in the same direction, can still be undone by a great force, you know?
Yeah.
But, fuck it. All you need to know is that the idea is that instead of having all 3 arrows going in the same spot, they all need to go in different directions with their own strengths in order to become a giant shape.
Yeah.
A giant shape being a cube along the... because this is the weirdest and most memorable Aquarion attack prior to any of the attacks that get demonstrated in Aquarion Evol.
Yeah.
Which, again, like, I say that is not an easy feat, because this is the trans-dimensional Mugen attack. Become a giant shape. As Solar Aquarion, by the way, this is in this form, shoots out a laser from its feet because the legs would otherwise be the top half of Luna, which fires long-range projectiles. Oh wait, no, wait, I got it wrong. Luna is the wings, so the wings become the bow and arrow shooting in one direction. Like the legs, which are like the top half would be Mars, instead fires out like an extending sword. And then, of course, the top half, which is already Solar Aquarion, fires a Mugen Punch. X, Y, and Z axis. And it just destroys all 3 mimic vector machines at once while forming a cube.
It is fucking ridiculous is what it is. I'm just like, sure, yeah, that makes sense, I guess.
It's such a huge leap in, like, escalation, too, because the Mugen Punch happens early in the series.
Yeah.
And then there's at least one fight where the gimmick is, like, needing to destroy 2 cherubims at once.
Yeah.
That there is an upgrade to... There's an evolution of the attack that's called the Mugen Cross, where it's 2 Mugen Punches, like, firing independently of one another, like, arms crossed, shooting in opposite directions. But this is just the most insane because it's like, okay, we don't have 3 Mugen Punches. How the hell do we make a 3D attack work? This.
Like this.
I mean, we got plenty of screen caps. It makes sense when you look at it, but it's like, goddamn, this is the sort of thing that only Shoji Kawamori could have gotten away with during the mechanical design phase. Like, something that had to have happened during, like, his prototyping, because one thing that's always been known about Kawamori and how he prototypes mechanical designs is that he first builds them with Lego. I have to imagine he stumbled across this idea when just arranging like the limbs and mechanisms and all this shit and being like, hold on, I got it. I'm gonna have this in the pocket for 18 fucking episodes before I whip it out.
Oh, he saved it for like I wouldn't say near the end, but like the last half of this show.
Yeah, it is the whole idea now. Oh, and I forgot to even mention the most important part about like what leads into the transdimensional Mugen attack. Well, 2 things actually.
Yeah.
One is the title graphic, which all the title graphics for special attacks are fucking amazing. Least of all because this transdimensional one, the actual Japanese text, how it's spelled out, it includes 3D in the title, and you see it like split apart into like red and blue layers to make it look like you're supposed to look at it with those old cheap lenticular 3D glasses.
God, yeah.
But the more important part, even before that, is that once Apollo, Sirius, and Sylvia become themselves again, after the experiences they had of mimicking each other and like kind of making their true selves better for it, that causes Aquarion to physically grow in size.
Yeah.
So they grew in size first before launching an attack that went in all 3 axes. And it was a powerful enough attack that was so beautiful and demonstrated how much these characters had grown that it warranted this episode having a unique credit sequences that is way more somber. Like, it's just a very soft piano, like, interlude version of the Genesis of Aquarion theme.
It's really nice, yeah.
They grew figuratively and at least for the robot, literally.
Literally, yeah. What an episode.
Fucking beautiful anime.
Yeah. They always go the extra mile with shit like this.
Yeah. And Evil just went even more wild with like the goofy ideas to the point where they even found a way to just like fully recontextualize and like everything about what you knew about certain characters in this particular show. Which, we're done talking about these 2 episodes. This is the spoiler section. So we might as well talk about the mother of all spoilers that is going to be the ultimate litmus test for whether you are on board with watching anything of the Aquarion series or not. I feel like it's for the better if I say this now, than let you discover it the hard way and have your expectations like set improperly beforehand.
All right, just lay it out. Just tell us what the spoiler is.
So Aquarion Evil, unsurprisingly, it also takes place 12,000 years after this, so there's another round of reincarnations that still date back to, you know, the original characters of Apollonius and Cillian. Toma is out of the picture, but you see a similar character that is the main antagonist. That is because it is basically the manifestation of Toma's hate, for a very specific reason. At the end of Genesis of Aquarion, the tree of life that the Shadow Angels have been trying to build up with the harvested energy of humans, shit goes wrong and it collapses. And because the tree of life represents the life force of the earth itself, the earth is about to fucking fall apart and explode. And it leads to a cataclysmic like battle where Apollo, Sirius, who briefly had a heel turn because he realized he was like part Shadow Angel himself, and Toma in Aquarion have to sacrifice themselves to like use Aquarion's power to sew the earth back together, embedding it, within the foundation of the planet. So all three of them are basically bound inside there. Is also where like the modified opening line for this podcast episode comes from, where it's Apollo saying to Sylvia, in another 12,000 years, let's meet again in the next life, which does happen, but it is not the meeting of the original two souls that you think it is, because when Aquarion gets buried into the earth, sewing it up with two Mugen punches, pulling the pieces together, Toma, Sirius, and Apollo together are able to finally see into the deeper innermost part of each other's souls, which in Toma's eyes is like, finally, I am the closest I've ever been to my long-lost love. I know he is Apollonius deep down. I know he is. Wrong. It's Apollonius's dog.
That's right. That's why he's such a feral child. That's why he sniffs people out. That's why he's a dog.
Because Apollonius had a tiny pup, a little angel dog with wings named Pollen, who, during his time, actually really likes Cillian as well. Basically in the same way, like that all dogs, or most dogs, love other humans.
Yeah.
I imagine she gave him good scritches.
Yes.
And was like, even as like their lives were ending, Pollen specifically made a wish to the heavens to be able to have his soul reincarnate as a human, so that he could be along Cillian's reincarnation. And yes, it is emphasized, like as you say, because of Apollo's bestial, animalistic mannerisms. The thing is, that stops being the case, and like with the original show, and they try to double down even more on the confirmation that he is the reincarnation of Apollonius, because everyone on staff, again, Kawamori was a writer.
Right.
He was directing and writing this. Everyone at Satellite did not want him to go through with this, at least the people that were on the writing staff.
They want to stop him from this, huh?
Yeah, which is also why when the OVA happened a couple years later, like Apollo is like a very different type of character by contrast. Like he's a bit less of like of a feral person, and is more of like a loner that lives in the woods, and he lives with his grandfather like kind of prior to the story, and like has a bit of a grudge against humans for how they treat nature. But no, as it turns out, like, yeah, Apollo was the reincarnation of Pollen, who then later like reincarnates, split into two people that look suspiciously a lot like, yeah, they are the reincarnations of Apollo. And surprise, the Genfudo character in Evil, known as Zenfudo, he's the actual Apollonius.
Whoa.
And all these facts, the revelation is so shocking that it pisses off Toma so goddamn much that his hate festers for 12,000 years, that it eventually breaks out as its own person, finds a parallel dimension that has been cursed with, like, basically no women existing whatsoever. Any women that did exist have all either died off or turned into men. So now he is basically giving them a reason to invade this other universe where there are women, to kidnap them so that their race does not die off. But really, all of this is like just for ulterior motives of exacting revenge against of what he felt was being deceived for, chasing after his boyfriend's dog.
Yeah. He is just so mad.
Again, there are people that fucking hated this twist when it happened in 2012 because they were so invested in like what the original anime had basically landed on by the end that, oh yeah, like Apollo is the reincarnation of Apollonius. Sylvia is Cillian, or rather one half of Cillian's soul, because surprise, Sirius was also the other half of Cillian's soul. That's why they were siblings.
Yeah.
But it's the fact that the villain was trolled
Yeah.
is what makes it so fucking funny to me. And the fact that, more specifically, why I took to it a lot more is that this is one of the first things I was ever told about by someone that was watching the Aquarion series. Before I had even watched the anime, before I even watched Evil, I think I saw the OVA first. Like, it was the same person that told me all this also showed me the OVA, which was like my first introduction to how Aquarion fights, and I was like, damn, this robot is cool.
Right. But that was the first thing you ever learned.
It was the first thing I learned, and so it made it that, like, when I watched like the actual like anime from the start, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I see what Kawamori was doing.
Yeah. Wow,
the rest of the people at Satellite were fucking cowards.
They should have leaned harder into it, IMO.
But yeah, that's why. Like, that's why I always stipulate that, like, Evil is a fun ride. It's a fun watch if you want to double down on all the goofy shit that surrounds Aquarion. Because I do think, like, as a more serious story, I do think it's not near anywhere, like, it's not as strong as it ultimately ends up being in Genesis of Aquarion.
Right.
There are some high points, but if you think about, like, how we talked about these highlight episodes, you know, the fact that we talked about, you know, the goofy episodes primarily, you're going to remember the goofy episodes of Evil even more because that is just the strong suit of that particular anime. Yeah, that's it. I just needed to get that out there because, I mean, we were never going to do a full episode on Aquarion Evil. So I at least felt like I had to get it in here as part as, like, extra knowledge regarding this series. And yeah.
And now you know? Listener, know too. So it's up to you if you're into that or not, if that makes you want to watch the show more.
Yeah. And better yet, you can make the smarter choice than I did and just simply stop at Evil instead of watching any of the other Aquarion anime after that.
Yeah. You could just stop.
Yeah, Genesis and Evil are basically, like, they clearly are made to work as a duology when you look at it. I do wish Myth of Emotions just had a lot more meat to it, but it's whatever. I do respect that Myth of Emotions was chosen as the subtitle because you abbreviate it. It spells Moe.
I didn't realize that when people were calling it Moe. I was like, oh, you motherfuckers knew what you were doing here. Yeah.
Well, when you consider that Evil spelled backwards is love.
Yeah. They were.
It's like that really was the first sign when I looked at it that I was hoping maybe there's a chance, maybe we're back. But alas, it was like, well, at least they tried, even though it was fleeting.
Yeah.
At least we'll always have Genesis of Aquarion, both the anime and especially the song.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just listen to it when you want to feel good, or feel something romantic. I don't know. Or anything else that Akino has sung, honestly. Again, like, she's a great singer.
And listen, just keep listening to us. Listen to our podcast and support us too, IMO.
Yeah, we still got more bangers in us to get through before the podcast reaches its end. But yep. And as always, thanks, Neff, for being here as part of this program. Thanks for everyone that has been listening. Tune in next time for what'll be a complete surprise, and I'm going to let Neff decide on it because I can't think of a clever hint for what we want to do next.
Well, we'll see. What will it be? It'll surprise. Goodbye, everyone.